Welcome to Soup Reviews. What's your favorite scary movie? Today we review 2016's Plank Face, written by Brian Williams and Scott Shermer and directed by Scott Shermer, starring Nathan Barrett, Susan Martin, and Ellie Church. Freedom is wild, whatever that means. The back of the box says, a man is captured by a family of feral, wood-dwelling cannibals who want to make him one of their tribe. Can they successfully break him, or will he find their wild ways oddly alluring? The movie opens up to Phil and Sarah sitting in a car in the woods, basically daring each other to strip tease for one another. At which case, they do. And then Phil gets killed by Plankface, and Sarah then gets an axe thrown at her, which definitely kills her too. Then we cut to two hikers. This is Max and Stacy, and they pass by another hiker, and then they continue on through one of the longest opening credit scenes you'll ever see. Finally, they stop and they start setting up camp, and at this point, we find out that Max has been in prison, though we don't find out why. Max ends up getting put in a sleeper hold by the hiker that they passed earlier in the movie. And when he wakes up, there's a creepy lady in a bunny mask crawling all around him. He gets up to see that his girlfriend Stacy is now being attacked by the hiker that they passed earlier in the movie. And it turns out that she's getting raped by him. This is the first of many rape scenes in this movie. Max walks over and bashes this guy in the head with a rock, and then sodomizes him with his own knife, before finally slitting his throat with that same knife. That's not sanitary. Before getting knocked out himself. Max wakes up tied up in a cabin, and the same creepy bunny mask girl is creeping around him again, and then she leaves. And at this point, we see old man Plankface come crawling out of some place, and he crawls out, is wheezing, vomits, and then lays down on the floor. Clearly, he doesn't feel very well. So then the lady in the bunny mask and another older lady come in, and they start creeping around Max. They're touching him, laughing, caressing him, slapping him, laughing, and eventually they punch him in the balls. And then old man Plankface pukes again. And it's at this point that the older woman goes over to old man Plankface and begins to breastfeed him. Max, at this point, finds a knife. And then the two creeper girls, are crying over old man Plankface. And then it appears that he dies. Well, it's at this point that Max escapes the cabin before getting brought back by an even older lady with a gun. So the even older lady brings Max back to the cabin, and they tie Max back up, and they start slapping him and kissing him. Mixed signals. And then they nail his feet to the floor of the cabin. Mixed signals. So after Max escapes, he runs into an even older lady with a gun, who brings him back to the cabin. And then they start cutting into dead old man Plankface, and they feed his testicles to Max. Mixed signals. This movie is only disgusting all of the time. So the older woman pulls the plank off of dead old man Plankface and gives it to the two creepy girls, and they take it out to a creek and start cleaning it off. And then she takes the plank and warms it up in a fire, and then places it on Max's face. This might be a Plankface origin story. So he wakes up a little bit later, and they've removed the nail from his foot and untied him. And then they have a funeral pyre for dead old man Plankface. And then they have dinner, and then they rape him. I have deep sorrow in my heart for everyone involved in the making of this movie. So then Plankface begins, and the creepy girls walk to this creek completely butt naked. The two creepy girls begin washing themselves, but Plankface Begins seems kind of dour, and so he's just kind of sitting there. He's completely broken, and so they wash him for him. They're really doing him a solid. Then they're back at the cabin, and it's time for Plankface Begins to get raped again. Luckily, he wakes up just in time to throw her off of him and then rape her back. Mixed signals. Cut to the morning, and the creepy girls are eating some sort of gross crap. Plankface Begins comes over and joins them, and he takes it from them and eats the rest. And then he goes and puts on some pants, and he leaves the cabin and starts wandering around in the woods for a little while. Morning, soup spoils. And then the creepy girls finally put on some clothes, and they sort of sit around the cabin for a little while. And then Plankface Begins finds his old camping site, and he sits and he cries for a little bit. And then there's a change in tone of the music, which leads you to believe that something in Plankface Begins has changed. Now it's dark, and he is still out in the forest. The creepy ladies are back at the cabin getting ready to go to sleep, and they look lonely. Plankface Begins stumbles upon a road, and there's a car pulling up on the road, and the guy gets out of the car and asks if he needs any help. Cut to the morning, where the three creepy ladies are playing at the creek, and Plankface stumbles upon them with blood all over himself, and the dude who asked if he needed any help hanging over his shoulder. The ladies laugh as Plankface Begins puts the body down on a rock, and he's still alive, and the oldest lady starts cutting into him. She cuts off his testicles and feeds them to Plankface Begins, who this time eats them willingly. Mixed signals. Before finally going and having intercourse with the two other creepy girls, while the older lady finishes off Car Dude by lighting him on fire. Cut to the cabin, where we find out that she wasn't just lighting the dude on fire to kill him, she was cooking him, and now they all get to eat a delicious meal. And it's at this point where Plankface Begins starts fighting over one of the limbs with Bunny Girl, before finally trying to have intercourse with her again. Cut to the middle of the night, where the old creepy lady beckons him to her. So Plankface Begins sits by the old creepy lady, and she hands him his ID, to which he throws that in the fire. And then she hands him his money, and he throws that in the fire. And he looks at her and he says, "Family," as if he had forgotten how to talk. And then, as apparently the transformation is almost complete, she hands him a picture of him and Stacy. Cut to the morning, where the old creepy lady hands him an axe, and they start on a long trek through the woods before they finally come up to Stacy, who is tied up to a tree. Plankface Begins drops his axe and starts caressing her face, and she says, "Please save me." And he picks up his axe, and she says, "Max, no." And he says, "Max, die. Pita." And Pita is part of this goofy little language that the ladies have taught him. Apparently that means something like Plankface Begins. And then he brings the axe down on her head and kills her. And then the three creepy ladies and him sit there and start eating his dead girlfriend. And that's the way that the movie ends. This movie is the type of movie that would like the smell of its own farts. The cover art makes it look like it's going to be a lot of fun. And then it turns out to not be fun at all. It was a real slog to get through. If I would have recorded this review the day that I watched it, I would have been a whole lot harsher on this movie. Truth be told, I watched the first 2/3 of it about a month and a half ago, and then it took me a month and a half to finally go, well, I guess I should finish this one so I can review it. It is not a fun movie to watch. It is really just gross all the time. It's brutal. it's not good. There's not a lot of dialogue, so I guess that's okay. The actor and actresses do exactly what they're supposed to do. The cinematography is pretty good. Not a lot of complaints right there. It's really dark for a lot of the movie. It's just really freaking gross. Oh my goodness, this movie's real gross. And it's got a lot of rape in it, which is one of those tropes that it seems like the director and writer kind of flipped on its head, because it's the man who's getting raped the majority of the time. But it is not by any means, it's not a fun movie to watch. It's pretty gross. So given all those things, I'm gonna give this movie an F+. I don't know why I'm giving it that plus at the end. It's a movie that you should probably avoid. And that being said, given that this is an origin story, I'm really excited to see where they don't take this character in the future. Special thanks to Shakefist for letting me use their music. Thanks, guys. You're gonna regret it.